Fiji has recorded 90 cases of suicide and 97 cases of attempted suicide as of last week Friday. There was a total of 607 suicide and 669 attempted of suicide cases reported for the last 6 years. With me tonight to discuss more about this is Regional Trainer and President for the Youth Champs for Mental Health, Lionel Rogers, and Temaima Rokotongane, Crisis Intervention Service Manager of Lifeline Fiji. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, clearly suicide has become a real social issue in Fiji, and your organizations, I believe, both work towards the prevention of suicide and help in times of crisis, kind of like Lifeline. Now, is it possible to predict suicide? This question, of course, is posed to the both of you.
Okay, thank you. Suicide is indeed predictable. We need to learn the warning signs. People don't just attempt to complete suicide immediately. There are warning signs way before the crisis even happens. And because of the limited awareness around the topic, young people, especially because that's a target group that we work with, young people don't know the signs, or our culture also stops them from reaching out to someone who's going through a crisis.
And with, you have anything to add with Lifeline?
Matthew, not all completed suicide cases are just spur of the moment.
Yeah.
They have plans. They prepare themselves to go about that. So, yes, I agree with what Lionel has said on that.
And with the work that you both do you both go out into the communities creating awareness? For example, Youth Champs of Mental Health. You said your focus group is clearly on young people.
Yeah. So Youth Champs of Mental Health, we have several programs working with young people. We do schools outreach. We work with about 30 schools covering over 50,000 students in Fiji. That's in the 3 divisions. We also do peer mentoring training for class captains in schools, because we don't have the capacity to cover every group or every young person. What we do is we create little beacons of hope in each school, and these people act as our eyes and ears and also provide support to young people. We have also started reaching out into different areas of Fiji, training youth leaders in becoming peer educators, as well as reaching across the Pacific to another 8 countries in spreading our gospel of hope and building resilience for young people.
8 countries. What other 8 countries have you worked with?
We're working with Tonga, Samoa, Vanuatu, PNG, Kiribati, Cook Islands, Fiji, and we're looking at Solomon Islands as well as the other small closer islands. And we're doing this through a national school climate survey, which gauges the climate of the school climate for young people and bullying.
And is this something you're you're doing with the government, or is this initiative you're doing on your own?
No, this is a collaboration between Youth Champs of Mental Health and Gleason in the US. Unfortunately, we don't have the funds here in Fiji to carry this out. We have worked with the government on several projects to do with schools and young people, but in regards to research and data collection, we work with international organizations.
Lifeline Fiji, any relation to Lifeline Australia?
Yes, we do. We are trained by them, by Lifeline Australia, and also we are provided support by them in, maybe it's not a large amount of support, but they are there as our mentors and also provide financial support for us.
It's a crisis intervention service, am I correct?
Yes.
So what does that mean when you say Lifeline Fiji being a crisis intervention support line or service?
Thank you, Matthew. As we are at the moment, we provide a national toll-free line where Fijians, individuals can call in when they are in crisis. And when we talk about crisis, taking into account the different age groups out there in the community, a crisis can range from a 6-year-old calling in because of something that he has lost, a young teenager calling in because of relationship issues, maybe an elderly who's over 70 years of age, who's alone at home and feeling lonely. These are some of the things that we receive on the line. And at the same time, the line was set up to provide support for individuals who are also contemplating suicide.
And how long has this line been in operation?
I think through the Ministry of Health and Vodafone Fiji, also Digicel, company for providing this for the last, I think, 3 years.
Yeah.
The inception was in 2013, and it's already been 3 years going. This is the 4th year.
And how effective has that been? Like on a busy day, how many calls would you be looking at in terms of people being in crisis?
Minimum would be 10.
10?
And if there's a national disaster, we are inundated with calls. So
It's just constant flowing.
it's constant.
And
It's
I'm assuming the team that you have are well equipped to handle the different crises that come through.
Yes, and we have a supervisor, so I basically provide support through supervision in times of crisis while the crisis intervention officers are online.
And with Youth Champs of Mental Health, apart from creating awareness, what else do you do?
Youth Champs of Mental Health does so many things, because the majority of the population is young people. We're involved in so many different fields. So we do education and awareness. We also do lobbying on the changes of policy and improving the current policies that we have.
Yeah.
We also work with schools in having coping mechanism, doing classes on health and well-being. There's so many things, and we're stretched thin because of the limited interest in mental health per se. Yeah? So what we're trying to do is we try to respond to as many invitations as possible. We try to respond to as many young people who are in crisis as possible. If we can't do that, then we have a referral system with organizations such as Lifeline, Psychiatric Survivors Association, Fiji Alliance on Mental Health, an organization that deals with lobbying and advocacy as well around education on mental health and mental illness.
That's very interesting what you said concerning how little interest is given towards mental health. So I'm assuming it's the same thing happening within the Ministry of Health. Is there little interest in there as well? Or rather, how can I put it this way? Is there little funding that is allocated for mental health, or little money from the budget that is allocated towards mental health?
Don't get me wrong, Ministry of Health has been instrumental in providing the funds for our young people and for community sessions and projects. But the funding that we're receiving is just not enough, because looking at the population coverage, if 100,000 is placed towards awareness and education on mental health and mental illness, looking after a population of close to 1 million, it's not enough. And we need to increase that funding. So what we've tried to do is we're also looking at solutions.
Yeah.
We're looking at international organizations who are able to give us funding, UN organizations, as well as private businesses. And that's something that we would like these shows to help us with, create some visibility around the services that we provide, and it's free of charge. We have volunteers providing this service without pay. What we use the money for is administration and helping young people. We can't wait for a young person to die before we start responding. We need to think about ways in which we can prevent these suicides from happening. And FBC, on the last For the Record show that we were here, we would like to thank Stanley and FBC for providing that platform, because we received so many emails and so many calls, and we received support emails. So these shows help us, and every little platform that we have help us in creating awareness around mental health and mental illness.
Thank you for that, Lionel. We'll go to a quick break now, and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back to For the Record. One thing that I wanted to talk about tonight was the statistics. 90 cases of suicide and 97 cases of suicide attempt. Total of 187 cases from the beginning of this year to last week Friday. Now this is actually stated by Brigadier General Gilio. One thing I want to highlight though, between that statement and what I got from the police, there's actually 196 cases. So between last Friday and this week, an increase of 10 cases. Could you explain this? Is there a discrepancy within the reporting system?
Looking at statistics, there's a lot of discrepancies when you come to statistics. When we looked at the statement issued by Brigadier General Gilio, and you look at what was issued by the center, there's like 10 cases difference because we believe there's a lot of contamination of data
Yeah.
because we don't have a central reporting system. I mean, I could be corrected, but different organizations have different statistics. And what mechanisms do we have in place to compile all this data as one, under one reporting system? So you have Ministry of Health, where patients are taken in and they have their data. Then we have the police force, whereby the doctors call in the police, they have their data. Then we have little organizations that receive calls and also receive cases with different data. So the data that we received and is used mainly in the media is what's reported from the police.
Yeah.
There's no central reporting system to date, but like I said, I could be corrected. But this is what has been discussed in a lot of mental health circles, and we are talking about improving these systems.
Well, with that being said, what's the best thing you believe that could help with better reporting systems? I mean, I've looked at some of the stats, and they would mention ethnicity, but there's no mention of gender. Is that also a concern? Would gender help in research topics, or with you being able to disseminate information better within the communities?
I guess we just had a meeting with National Committee on the Prevention of Suicide early this month, and they have started recognizing a third gender in reporting systems. So there's male, female, and transgender. And this is a good thing that it started, because now the ball's rolling, and now we can tailor-make and look at our target populations. We can look at who has the highest statistics, how we can tailor-make our programs to suit this population. And you know, we must acknowledge the police for now including that in their data. But if we look at the national reporting data, we went through it earlier in the show, it doesn't state. So this is probably just for the sake of that meeting, I'm not sure, but this is something that we could clarify.
Yeah, I was hoping to get the police in to actually talk about this, because I believe, you know, them being one of the stakeholders as well, and I believe in the National Committee of the Prevention of Suicide, they're also part of the community, that they would best be able to, you know, elaborate on the reporting systems. With Lifeline Fiji, one thing I've noticed as well within the report system are the types or the methods of suicide. Paraquat does stand out. Is the committee, the National Committee of the Prevention of Suicide, working with the Ministry of Agriculture, I'm assuming in terms of creating policies to ensure that the only people that buy paraquat are licensed farmers? Are you working on such a policy, or is there something that's in the works right now?
Well, at the last meeting, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Agriculture are working together, National Committee on the Prevention of Suicide, and they've just compiled a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement on ways they can move together, and it's slow, gradual processes. But what they're trying to do is we're trying to look at the amount of information that we have, and we, psychotherapist Selena Corleva had spoke about this earlier in several shows, that we have a Fijian calendar that we use, and during the time where they start clearing for their next plant, they use a lot of pesticides and weedicides. And this is the time we need to be aware and take them away from where young people can get to them. But at the same time, we must understand that when a young person is suffering immense emotional pain, they will go through desperate measures to get that. So we need to work together, not only Ministry of Agriculture, not only Ministry of Health, but all organizations and all communities, in creating a safe environment where a young person can talk to someone. Because the pesticide and the weedicides will always be there. It's how we talk to young people and get them to come out of that immense emotional psych pain.
In the reporting system and everything concerning the methods, what would you, I'm pretty sure in both your experience, what would you say is the most common use for people in general?
Matthew, with Lifeline Fiji, we do not have statistics on the completed cases and the courses and we usually borrow that from the Fiji Police Force. What we work at with Lifeline Fiji is trying to reach out to individuals, because we believe that when someone is in emotional pain, is in an immense emotional status of pain, this triggers suicide. And paraquat or pesticide is just another tool that they can use. There's other means of taking one's own life. But our issue is, do they have the coping the strength to cope? Because if they do not have the strength to cope, then that actually will lead to looking for measures to harm themselves.
And what kind of problems, what kind of issues do these people face? Is it to do with a mental health issue, or is it like, do they go through like everyday issues in life? Could you explain what would bring someone to the point of resorting or thinking about suicide? Does it build up, or?
I'd like to share a little bit on that. When we talk about emotional well-being, every individual has a capacity to feel emotional. And with every crisis comes an aspect of your emotion being affected. Physically, with a crisis, anyone can assist, anyone can help, anyone can walk in and assist you to overcome that crisis. But the challenge is with the emotional aspect of a crisis, because it's invisible, and we human beings, we are crafty in hiding our emotions. Now, when I said that, think about the society. When you are going through something that you think or you feel personally that it's not right, it's not accepted in the community, would you display your emotions publicly? You won't. So what do? We shelve that down. So when an emotion is shelved, it's basically like filling up a cup with your emotion. Today you go through a crisis. The crisis passes, but the emotion stays in the cup. Tomorrow, another crisis. The next month, another crisis. I remember the last time I heard there was an argument between two brothers over a bowl of soup, and one ended up taking the life of the other. There was a lot of discussions around that, why over a bowl of dal. At Lifeline Fiji, we felt that it was at that point in time they were right to the brim of their emotional cup, and that bowl of soup just triggered that. And because of what they have had inside of them, they haven't talked about it. It led to the loss of one's life. Likewise with suicide. Now, our take is giving a listening ear for someone to empty that cup. When they call our crisis line on 132454, this is where we provide support by just giving them the space to talk about whatever they want to talk about, be it good or bad, or something that they're not happy about. To provide that space, that will eliminate, or that will give them time to think. Once they empty their emotions, this is where their mind comes in, the cognitive behavior comes in, where they can decide for themselves what they can do next. And we'll be there to support and facilitate the process till they recover.
Thank you for that, Tima. We'll go to a quick break, and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, one thing I've noticed, especially reviewing the report, that it had exam results there as one of the factors that would lead to a young person contemplating suicide. Given that this is the end of the year, exam results about to come out, how would you advise parents to act towards their kids, or at least help support them?
See, examination results is one of the contributing factors. It's not the result, it's the unrealistic expectations from the parents to become something. So when they're looking at exam results, they want 90 to 100% in English, or 100 to 100% in maths. Not every child's going to be a mathematician. Not every child's going to be a scientist or a doctor. So we need to understand that children, everything that happens for a reason. If they're slowly, their marks are declining in class, it's because there's something that's going on that they need to talk about. And parents need to create that nurturing, enabling environment where their children can talk about what they're going through. Because not only is it the expectations from the parents, but it's the expectations from the teachers to get a certain percentage pass. It's also from the peers to be a part of a group or clique of friends. They need to fit in. So there's so many different factors at play. So that's something that we need to consider as parents, is how we talk to our children, how we provide that enabling environment, how we accept and say, oh, so you got a C this year. That's okay, we can try next time. We can start talking about ways of improving the child's performance in school. And if you do that, you're saving your child's life every single day.
In the past, it would be said that parents would normally tell kids, we're paying for your school fees, and that, I believe, was a lot of what burdened parents and the pressure as to why they would tell their kids they needed to pass. But given that now school fees are being paid for by the government, there's allocation for bus fares as well, there shouldn't be any reason that parents' expectations or rather them to, put pressure on their kids to pass. So my question is, would them having to pass either do something with our standard of living now, the pressure that they're feeling, or would you say that parents themselves are going through a crisis of their own?
I would like to say something very short before I hand over to Tima. It takes a whole village to raise a child. Where the parents fail, the rest of the community comes in. A child needs at least 3 people to nurture them and help them grow resilience and to help them grow their capacity. So the first thing that we need to know is that wherever our parents fail, the community comes in. If a young person attempts a complete suicide, we as a community fail that young person. We are to blame for that person's death because we didn't create a resilient community or community of care. And I'd like to give it to Tima because they deal with crisis and they get a lot of calls from students as well.
Thank you, Lionel, for that. Now, when we look at suicidal attempt or ideations from children, there's in so many cases we found out that parents make decisions without taking the children's best interest at heart. When we talk about marks in school, when we talk about employment after school, are we also looking at what the child can achieve, what is achievable by the child? Because most of the time in our culture, in a traditional Fijian setting, usually the child keeps quiet, is silent. It's what the elders expect that it needs to be adhered to. Now, when we look at that, how much pressure does that put on the child? And if the child goes back to school and cannot perform well, there's always ridicule, there's always bullying and blaming, and also from leaders or teachers in school, how they address the child. Now, if the expectation is from home, and this, whatever is going on in school, where does the child go to find definition for what he wants?
How many kids access your service?
There's not much, but for the few that has accessed our service, I'll give you an example, Matthew. Last 3, if I remember correct, last month, before the exam started, a young girl called the center and mentioned that she's very much concerned because the next day is her first paper. She's sitting for the year 13 paper. After we spoke, she voiced out her concern because of the expectation of her siblings who are looking after her. After we spoke, I found out that she's doing very well in school. It's the fear and the anxiousness of sitting for her paper and not performing to somebody else's expectation. After we discussed what we have to discuss, the next morning she went to school. When she came back in the afternoon, she called us and the tone of her voice has changed. I asked her to talk about her paper and she said, I just couldn't believe it. I did that. And then I said, tell me more. And she said that she just felt like she drank water. It was just like drinking water to her. She had it in her. She just needed that extra boost for someone to say, look at yourself in the mirror and say, you got this today. So it may be a lovely presentation in uniform and the smiley face, but someone got to find out what's going on underneath that person's heart. So what I'm talking about, Lionel, is actually, do we have the interest of the child at heart? And if we do, we will ask.
That's very nice. So when we talk about, with exam results, of course, this is between primary and secondary. But what about tertiary level? Clearly, that's different because, everything has to be paid for. The kids have pressure on not just trying to get through, being with a number of other students from different backgrounds and cultures, but also trying to ensure that they pass because it's obviously working towards their future. And from my understanding of are there support services as well within universities? That's where I want to go with this question. Like, are there support services available for students within in tertiary levels? For example, whether in uni.
At universities, I believe they have Student Life who provides support, but there's also referral systems to our organizations.
Yeah.
With the young people that we've helped, they come in straight into our service. Unfortunately, we don't have an office right now, so we're working freelance from home, and the young people accessing us through Facebook, which is the leading social networking site in Fiji for young people. So we gauge their statuses and we gauge their friends message us and tell us about what they're going through, and we try and respond to that. But when they're going into high school, they're going through a lot of a very delicate stage. They're going through puberty, and these changes, they try to fit in. Their marks decide whether their self-esteem will be high or low, and then you have the parents' pressure, and you have the teachers' pressure, and their peers' pressure. And there's also contagion suicides, cluster suicides. It may have not occurred here. I mean, it did occur here a few years ago in a primary school where 3 students did it. And this is just a sign that we need to create awareness around this as well. And how this is so is by using media platforms to create awareness. We can't just wait for suicides to happen and then we'll be called on a show. There needs to be constant awareness on television, on radio, and print media about suicide and the reality of it. And there's also emulation suicides on how the media reports suicide cases. We have some media outlets in Fiji who gives away the methods, not knowing that there are young people who's going through depression, who's going through crisis at the moment, and they see the papers and they read the method and they go out and they do it. And then we're sitting back and we're trying to figure out, we've done so much, but where are we failing? So we need to understand that it takes a whole community to create awareness around this one topic. And the media plays a very important role. And it's platforms such as this that starts the discussion. And just something I'd like to put out there is, for people who's watching this show, there are other families who can't afford television, who can't afford newspapers, who don't get this exposure or this information. We would like you to take it out into your community, spread the message about FBC's show and what they spoke about. And in that way, we're indirectly saving lives, not only of young students, but of high school students, of youths as well.
Thank you for that, Lionel. We'll go to a quick break and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, okay, so this is one thing I've, from what I know, to my knowledge, we spoke about service providers within tertiary levels. In high school, primary school, from what I remember the last time, with the Ministry of Education trying to do something, especially concerning the 3 boys that drank paraquat, and they tried to do an intervention process. They also tried to engage, they also tried to get counselors within schools. Now, like I said, to my knowledge, these counselors are former teachers. How are they, or teachers within the schools, or some teachers themselves, taking up the basic counseling training within a week. And could you explain how that could be ineffective?
Thank you, Matthew. When we talk about the effectiveness of counseling, there is already a barrier, like you said. From what I'm hearing from you, there is a barrier, a teacher-student relationship.
Yeah.
That relationship will be maintained as that. One will be a teacher and the other one is a student. Even though they will be providing counseling support for the child, from the child's perspective, it's always my teacher. So When we look at counseling support for children in crisis, what are the terms that will be used in that session? We talk about training for counselors at this point. There is a need for intensive training for counselors. I'm not aware of the training provided by the ministry at the moment, but what I'm concerned with, because we have children calling the crisis line, and as we speak, Matthew, one prominent school here in Suva has been calling us to provide counseling support for the children in school, and the principal has mentioned that they are not trained enough to do the job. So what I'm looking at right now, my concern is more damage than good done to the child. The terms that we use, some children have been informed that they are, or told that they are not good. They are not good children. They are bad children. They are bad influences in school. But from what we know, all children are good. It's just the bad choices that they make. So when we look at counseling in school, from the child's perspective, it's always that imbalance of a teacher-student relationship.
Coming towards that, coming from that rather, one thing that is apparent, especially in relation to not just young people, but suicide in general, is bullying. And that is something I believe that is happening a lot of now, about public shaming. For example, that video that was released a couple of weeks ago, and the two young people that were involved, and the different public shaming and bullying on not just social media but everywhere. Would you like to talk more about that?
Bullying is evident in schools, and this is seen through the suicide attempts and the suicide cases, as well as the number of invitations that's coming from schools for us to do awareness there. And we just received invitations last week to carry out anti-bullying sessions in schools. And I don't know, we're overwhelmed with the number of bullying cases, but we can't say that it's shocking because we're not doing anything. We need to start creating that discussion. And Youth Champs for Mental Health is currently in the middle of our National School Climate Survey, which gauges the climate for young people in schools. And we're looking at bullying of gender diverse students. And we're trying to find out ways in which we can tailor make our programs to suit these young people.
Okay. And do you get a lot of bullying cases calling up on the lifeline that is?
We don't specifically, they don't specifically call in because they've been bullied. Usually the children, they call in because of their marks or they're not feeling okay. So when we explore more into their issues, we found out that they've been exposed to bullying also. And something that we used to share with our callers is being bullied, it does not mean that you're bad. It's just that the person bullying you has been bullied and he's just giving you what he has been given. So it empowers the child to build a different perspective of who she is or who he is despite what's going around them. And we work around changing the thinking pattern of a child and how to cope in this kind of situation, and maybe linking them up with the other support networks that's around them, either in school, at home, or even with us on our national crisis line. So it's basically about empowering them, because we cannot take away at that particular time the environment that they are in. We cannot take them away from there. So we give back something that they would be able to use as coping mechanism and to provide support for them while in the community.
And Matthew, if I might add, I got a call last night from a colleague who was attacked on social media, naming the group Chat Fiji. Is a group that's affected so many people's lives on a personal level. I got a call last night saying that this certain particular individual put up a story of his whole family, and the family was distraught. He called last night and he was crying. And we need to work with the cybercrimes unit on making it more easy for young people to report these cases. Because if Facebook has failed in shutting down this disruptive group, and the police is not doing anything to try and stop that group from happening because of 36,000 likes, and likes is very important now in Fiji for some reason, I don't know why. We need to work with the cyber crimes unit, we need to work with the community in shutting down that page, because young people are attempting suicide, are killing themselves because of the increasing level of cybercrime that's happening, cyberbullying that's happening.
Yeah, this is clearly an issue that we all need to work together, as not just with the communities, but it seems that the public have, in terms of respect, lost respect, and I'm glad you brought that up. But we'll go to a quick break now, and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. One thing that, while doing this research, that I wanted to know was, who is at highest risk of suicide within Fiji? Would either of you like to answer that question?
We think young people, because they make up majority of the population, as well as looking at 0 to 35 years old. That is our national youth definition. So looking at the statistics as well, young people take up majority of the statistics, more than road accidents, more than drowning. It's young people, definitely young people.
You said drowning. Is drowning ever considered as part of someone completing suicide?
Now that's interesting, Matthew, because when we receive calls, when we ask our callers, they explain to us the plans that they have.
Yeah.
And drowning is one of them.
But does the police ever take that into account? I don't see that in the report. It's not listed as...
That is what we call the tip of the iceberg, because it can be termed as accidental drowning.
Okay.
But if there's thorough investigation around that, it can be linked to a relationship at home. Something must have been happening at the background. I remember a case where a young man called in and he's on the verge of taking his own life. And I asked about his plan. And he said, yes, I do. And right there and then, he was on the side of the road where cars really run fast past his house. His plan was just to walk in front of a running car, fast-moving car. He was heavily drunk, and it was accessible for him. And what would that be termed as? That would be an accident, because he was drunk, and the driver could have been charged, but who would have known that it was an attempted suicide?
So in cases as such, drugs and alcohol can increase the risk of suicide?
That's interesting also. When you say that drug and alcohol can increase the rate of suicide, I found out from my callers, for our callers here at Lifeline Fiji, that drugs is something that keeps them alive.
That's
when
interesting.
they go out of, because while they're taking drugs, it numbs their mind and numbs the pain that they're going through. I'm not saying this that they have to do it for those who are listening, for them to do it, but this is what we found out. In the absence of drugs, they are just themselves, and they feel everything from pain, rejection, the emptiness, the isolation, the bullying, the ridiculing. They feel that, but when they're on the influence of drugs, they don't feel it. So drug has been holding them, for some of them. Don't get me wrong on that. But then again, when we come to think of that, yes, drug is the contributing factor. We feel from the calls that we've been receiving that actually drug has been sustaining them. Likewise with alcohol, likewise with covered drinking, something that they use as coping mechanism. Now, my question is, how can we help?
It's just a band-aid solution that really offers another problem.
So it's a coping mechanism. We would see it as differently, because we're young people and we're talking to our peers, is it's used as a negative coping mechanism to suppress the problem or suppress the pain for a short period of time. But when you consume alcohol or drugs, it changes the way you think, the way you feel, and it could put you at a higher risk than most others. If you have a mental health difficulty and then you're drinking alcohol, it could be contributing factors to you taking that risk, attempting or completing suicide. So it's different in different cases, because it is a coping mechanism, but it's one that we don't push for.
A negative one.
Yeah, it's a negative coping mechanism.
If you, before we wrap up, what what advice, what would you like to give the public before we wrap up?
Our common slogan, there's always hope. Whatever you're going through, when you're feeling down and you're feeling there's no one to speak to, go on Facebook. I know everyone has Facebook. Search on Facebook for Youth Champs for Mental Health. Send us a message, set up an appointment, and we'll offer our support free of charge. And also remember that suicide does not discriminate. If you're the president, the prime minister, if you're the Queen of England, suicide does not discriminate. If you're not talking to someone, you're not receiving help, it can affect you. And also remember that silence is no longer golden. We need to start talking today.
Thank you. Tima?
Yes, for our viewers who are listening in tonight, if you need to speak with someone or you need to be heard, don't hesitate. Pick up your phone. Call us on 132-454. I'll say that again, 132-454. That's our national crisis support line. You can call us through Vodafone on Digicel, like our page on Lifeline Fiji page, and we will continue the conversation from there. Remember, you're not alone, and we are here to listen.
Thank you for that, and thank you very much for coming this evening. Learn and beware of signs of people contemplating suicide. Know there is always hope if you just talk to someone. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and from the team and I, have a good evening.
Good evening. I am Neman Indelain Batiki of the Fiji Sun. Welcome to Fiji's first TV editorial show. In my say tonight, I will speak on the need to let go of our racial prejudices. Let's be honest, there are still a fair bit of racial prejudice and racism in this country. It affects the way we think, our perception on issues, and the way we behave. Attorney General Ayaz Sayed Qayyum eloquently spoke on this issue at the Kulukulu Public School prize giving in Singatoka last Friday. There is not enough public discourse on this subject. We must talk about it more. We sometimes shy away from discussing it because some think it is too culturally sensitive and may offend some people. The positives that come when we talk about it far outweigh the perceived negatives. First, it will help eliminate the misunderstanding that exists and contributes to racial tension and disharmony and ethnic conflicts. Second, it educates people to accept the fact that while we may look different, speak a different language, worship differently, practice a different culture, we are all human beings and equal in the eyes of God. It is this element of equality that we should promote and protect because therein lies the solution to our social problems. If we uphold it, we will be able to create an even much better Fiji and a brighter future that our posterity will enjoy. It will foster national unity, peace, and stability. We should not look at our different backgrounds as a hindrance to our progress. Rather, we should regard our rich diversity as a source of great strength. This means we need to treat each other with respect and dignity. Of course, we can express opposing ideas and different opinions because we live in a democracy. We can differ as long as we do it without rancor. In some cultures, this is not allowed. Whatever the elders in the community say goes. The people below them have little choice or say. But we need robust discussions at all levels of our society, right up to Parliament. When we can cross the racial and religious divide to help those in need, then we are getting there with this vision of equality. When we can appoint people to leadership positions on merit and recruit workers based on merit, then we are close to this vision. When we can stop looking at life from our racially tinted glasses, then we are moving in the right direction. The Republic of Fiji military forces has been a target of racist remarks by some politicians in the past who question why it is dominated by Itoke. If they were thinking of a quota system where there was a fair representation from other races, then they did not know how the RFMF operates. The RFMF uses a very strict criteria that ensures that those recruited stand up to the rigors and demands of military service. It is in the interest of the RFMF and other stakeholders that selection is based on merit. It does not look at ethnicity as a qualification. It is a known fact that the majority of applicants for military service are Itoke, reflecting the composition of the force. Other government ministries have come under political scrutiny in the past because some departments are dominated by one ethnic group. If the employees were recruited on merit, so be it. This is the point I'm trying to make. If we continue to look at things from a racial perspective, then we will carry on unnecessarily kicking up a fuss about everything and wasting energy when we should be focusing on the important things in life. We are accustomed to helping people from our own group or fraternity. That's fine, but what we need to do next is to extend that spirit to help others outside of our circles. When we help people, we do it because of the need and because we have compassion and real love, irrespective of who they are, where they come from, their culture, ethnicity, religion, political affiliation, economic circumstances, or social status. We don't only talk about it, but we do it. Equality then becomes meaningful and empowering as an agent of positive social change when we live it in its purest form. This is Neman Indalembetike of the Fiji Sun. That was my say tonight. For more of my views, you can read the Fiji Sun. See you next week.